They are 19 in number, of which 13 of them are for conventional cargo, or you can say break bulk, while 6 of them are for container ships with a draft of between 12 to 15 meters. We also have a facility in Lamu that is a new terminal that is meant to serve South Sudan, Ethiopia, and northern part of Kenya. And also it can serve also cargo coming to Nairobi and transshipment cargo. In Lamu, we have 3 terminals. That is Terminal 1, 2, 3, and they are multi-purpose terminals. They can handle conventional cargo vessels, at the same time container vessels. Currently, we don't have a lot of activities in Lamu because it is still a new facility. We are looking into partnering with shipping lines to ensure that we have vessels coming to that particular port. I don't know whether it was by design that I'm seated next to the gentleman from CMA. We have been handling quite a number of ships, including last week we had 1 vessels, and also we are expecting another one. So that is for Lamu. And in terms of inland connectivity, the terminals I mentioned, the 4 terminals are connected by rail and roads. And in terms of rails, we have 2 types of rails. We have a meter gauge, the old one, and the standard gauge rail, the new one. With a transit time from Mombasa to Nairobi of about 8 hours for standard gauge, and to Naivasha is about 10 hours. From Naivasha, we do what is called transshipment from standard to meter gauge for onward railage to Uganda and western part of Kenya. So for introduction, I think that is basically for now. I'll come back for more.
Paul gets the floor in a minute again to talk a bit more about the progress and the developments in the sector. But let's continue with the introductions. Jean-Baptiste.
Thanks. So my name is Jean-Baptiste Longin. I'm Managing Director for CMA CGM in East Africa. So CMA CGM is a shipping line, 3rd shipping line in the world, and 3rd shipping line in East Africa as well. So our region comprises Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and from the main gateways which have been mentioned by my colleagues, we can also serve South Sudan, DRC, Zambia, etc., etc. In Mombasa, we do have 3 regular services calling every week. Dar es Salaam, we do have 3 services calling every week as well. We do serve the port of Zanzibar also. It's an important gateway, very complex one, but important gateway, not to be forgotten for the archipelago. Indeed, Lamu is a development, is nice infrastructure, which is there in Kenya, going through some challenges, though, as Paul was mentioning, we are believing that on the longer term, there is some potential over there. So Lamu, to me, is a kind of example of what can be done as development in the region, obviously through challenges, but also bringing quite a lot of opportunities. So we are happy to partner with KPA on this. We indeed had a vessel calling in Lamu last weekend. This vessel has come back to Mombasa and is currently working in Mombasa, and she will be sailing back to Lamu over the weekend, showing the trust that we are putting into this infrastructure. As shipping line, we obviously serve Nairobi through the SGR corridor. We are an important customer of Kenya Railways. But we can also, through our subsidiaries, do air freight, warehousing, project cargo, ground, so anything related to logistics. So this is basically what we do. And I think this can be a good transition to my neighbor.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Jean-Baptiste, it's good also to mention that we're not only talking about sea freight, it's also the air freight which is there and the direct flights daily KLM, Air France, Lufthansa, KQ, etc. There's a lot of opportunities both with the air freight as well as with the sea freight. So good to mention that part as well. Axel.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Axel Herzhauser. I work for Siva Logistics. Siva Logistics is a world-leading third-party logistics provider. We're part of the CMA CGM group. In my role, I'm the regional managing director for Middle East and Africa. And unlike many people here in the panel and also in the audience, I'm not based here in Kenya. I'm based in Dubai. So why am I here? East Africa is 1 out of 5 sub-regions in my Middle East and Africa region, and if not one of the most important, I would say. So for us at Siva Logistics, we see a lot of opportunities in this region. We also see a lot of challenges. So we've made quite a few investments here in East Africa, in particular in Kenya. And I really look forward to the discussions that we're going to have now over the next hour. And in particular, I'm looking forward to learning from the questions that are coming here from the audience, and also from the input from my fellow colleagues who are the panelists here. Thank you.
Thanks, Axel. I'll go to Dennis.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dennis Kaiser. I'm with DB Schenker. I'm the Managing Director for Kenya and East Africa. And personally, I'm in the country the last 15 years. As we are celebrating this year 60 years of independence in Kenya, Schenker is in Kenya established since 57 years, so we go a long way back. It's a global logistics service provider with a head office in Essen in Germany. And in Kenya, as everywhere, we are offering our services in air freight, in ocean freight, all related with local services, customs clearance, transportation, warehousing, distribution, as well as special logistics such as relocations, fairs and exhibitions, and sports events. And we are looking forward to have a super discussion here with the plenum and my colleagues here. Thank you.
Thanks. Last but not least, Norman.
Yeah, I just recognize that I'm the 3rd German in a row. I don't know why. Yeah, good morning also from my end to everyone. My name is Norman Herzberg. I'm the responsible sales area manager for Liebherr, for mobile harbor cranes for Africa and Middle East. I'm with the company already since 10 years. Just maybe brief introduction of Liebherr. So the company was founded in 1949 by the greatest Mr. Hans Liebherr. And why I'm saying that since then this company remains in family ownership, which is quite unique from my perspective. If you're just looking around the other fellows or the other let's say companies in the competition. Liebherr itself is very much diversified, so I mean, I believe that most of you know Liebherr as a construction machinery supplier, but we basically produce all kind of machinery, be it construction machinery, be it mining equipment, be it all kind of cranes, tower cranes, mobile cranes, but I'm basically here presenting maritime crane sector and in particularly mobile harbor cranes. So we as Liebherr, we have already a big footprint in Africa. So we founded our first service station in South Africa in 1958. So we are quite long in the region already and expanded meanwhile with other service stations in Ghana, Nigeria, Algeria. But we don't have yet any service station in East Africa. I mean, this is basically a chicken egg question. So we firstly need a critical population of machinery in the field and then set up a service station. So this is basically why I'm here, trying to promote our business, of course. And I forgot one thing. So we are also busy or present already in the region in Kenya with 3 ship-to-shore cranes, so gantry cranes in Mombasa. That's all for now.
Thanks, Norman. And you're not only the 3rd German in a row, also the 5th or 6th gentleman in a row. So an apology to the audience that we have a full male panel here. But I see in the audience we do much better. That's much better balance. So let's see. And I discussed it with Gilbert already. We will have as one of the action points after this session that we're going to organize in the coming months another in-depth discussion on this sector. And I will make sure that the panel is a bit better balanced in that regard. Let's go back to Paul on the discussion about what do we see in terms of developments, in terms of progress. Paul, you started already a little bit hinting to some of the developments done over the last couple of years, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. And then I will ask Axel and maybe Dennis as well, with your 57 years here in Kenya, at least your company, the company, to say some words about what we see in terms of the progress over the last years, because we intend to discuss in this kind of panels always the challenges and the issues which are not going well. But it's also good to realize what has happened over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years in Kenya in terms of infrastructure, in terms of opportunities for transport and freight. Paul, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. As I mentioned, I think this one is not loud enough. I will start with the sea. And I'll go some few meters away from the shoreline to a facility that is called Kipevu Oil Terminal. This is a new facility that has been completed and commissioned, and it is working currently. This is a facility for receiving tankers, and we are able to do up to 3 tankers at any given time, which means we are able to float up to almost 120 million liters at any given time. The facility has got 4 parking spaces, but 3 are already with the offloading arms that is fitted with the pipes. One is an idle one for the purpose of repairs. When you want to do some repairs for the tankers, you can service them in that one particular part. And the next facility is the cruise terminal that is also operational. And we have started receiving passenger ships in that particular terminal. It is at part number 1. And then we have completed phase 2 of second container terminal. And it gives us a additional capacity of 450,000 TEUs, which means Mombasa can now comfortably handle up to 2.1 million TEUs, that is containers, in a year. This new facility can handle easily with 3 ship-to-shore country cranes, new ones. And this one came after the phase 1 of second container terminal, which also has the similar length. And we also have a smaller one adjacent to it. It's called part number 20, which can handle smaller vessels, especially the feeder vessels to the islands. Apart from that one, we have also the ICD, which is after by SGR. It was commissioned way back in 2018, and it has got capacity to handle up to 450,000 TEUs in a year. Currently, we are doing almost 400, which means we are almost reaching the maximum. But there is no worry about it, because we already also have Naivasha that is also operational. These facilities can be used to handle both export and import cargo. And I know the aspect of cool logistic, that is perishable cargo going by sea because of the, in terms of it is cheaper compared to if it was to go by air. We have started some trial runs, and a container carrying perishable cargo can reach Mombasa within 8 hours when it is still fresh, and then it is plugged into the river points awaiting the ships for onward shipment. In Nairobi, we have facilities for river containers, plugging points, river plugging points, 330 plugging points, so at any one given time, we can handle up to 300 containers. Another facility that is online under construction is what is called Tongo Kundu Special Economic Zone. And the work is almost starting. And we expect to have about 3 terminals in that particular area. We also have a facility at what is called Shimoni Port. This is a fishing terminal, and it is also, the construction is ongoing, and we expect it to be completed within this year. Another facility that is also being worked on is we have a small port in Kisumu, the lake port. What we were doing there was the maintenance, and we are almost through with the maintenance. In that particular area, we also have a shipyard, and already we have 1 vessel that was built in Kisumu, and it is a ferry vessel, and it's due for commissioning so that it can operate within the 3 ports in Lake Victoria, that is Port Pearl, Mwanza, and Kisumu. Basically, those are the projects, the 3 projects which are underway, and I've also mentioned about the ones we completed, and we expect to spur the economic growth. In terms of challenges,
Challenges will take in a minute.
okay, thank
Let's first see what we have in terms of progress. And I'm asking Axel and then Dennis if you want to add some of the things we are seeing progressing over the last years.
Absolutely, Joris. So I think the way we look at it holistically is we see Kenya as the flagship of logistics and supply chain here in East Africa. We've seen for the past decade investments in infrastructure, system upgrades. We've seen ports, airports, railways, and the road being upgraded. But at the same time, we see a lot of challenges at the same time, right? So if we ask ourselves what has been done for the last 10 years, is that sufficient for the next 10 years? Is it even sufficient for what we need right now? Perhaps no, right? And I think this is why we're here today. This is why we're going to discuss areas where there is room for improvement. I think from our side, from what we see, I think multiple areas of improvements, in particular in the infrastructure. It is leading in East Africa, but it is perhaps not up to the full standard that is required to match the growth ambition that Kenya has, in particular on the EU trade. We also see an imbalance of trade. We see more cargo goods coming into Kenya than going out of Kenya, which we think might put some pressure on foreign exchange, which is for companies in our sector very important because we like to get paid in US dollars because a lot of our cost is in US dollars. So how do we handle this? So those are multiple areas I think that we should perhaps discuss also today, and I think it's not only for CEVA Logistics, but perhaps for everyone here in the panel and in the audience. Those are areas that are critical, very important, and where we hope we can resolve them in the next few years.
Thanks very much. Dennis, still on progress and developments, and I think Axel also was mentioning about, yes, are we doing enough? Is it enough? But let's see what has been done now, and then maybe I'll go back to my co-moderator, Gilbert, to say some things about the progress.
Yeah, thank you. I can echo what my colleague said. Now, when I first came here many years ago, I went into the port, and I thought, wow, yeah, now I know why the best runners are from Kenya. They must all work in the port, because it was very manual, it was very paper heavy, and you had really to go from pillar to post and back and forth, and it took time. And time is all what costs us, yes, and what made it expensive here. And over the years, we could really see how KPA and the other stakeholders have improved to the better. As you said, we are not yet there. We are maybe here, and are we ready for the future? That's the question mark. And then KPA and other stakeholders have improved. What about the access then? Yeah, the cargo has to move out of the port, out of the airport, and there out of the ICD. And then the challenges are coming in. Yeah, we got an SGR. Is that sufficient? We have a highway, our northern corridor. It's a single lane. Is that sufficient? Yes. Are the other stakeholders next to KRA, KPA, are they coping? Are they going with the progression others are going? And that's the question, I think, what we need to discuss. Yes, we came a long way. We have improved tremendously Is it sufficient? That's the question.
Gilbert, is it sufficient?
I think we can't say we are not okay. We are not there yet. It's not sufficient, but we are progressing. One of the things that is happening currently in the port of Mombasa and the corridor is that we have under a framework that is called the Mombasa Port Community Charter. The charter basically brings together all the players, private and public sector, signed into a commitment to actually make our logistics work. I do have the opportunity of chairing, and that is why there have been a bit of progress. We've seen quite a bit of progress. But I'm also, I think Mr. Bor touched on something that I'm very passionate about, cold chain logistics. And I think SIFA would probably give quite a bit of an input in this. KPA has done quite a bit in terms of providing the infrastructure around the port to handle cold chain logistics. However, I think we need more investments into the hinterland where now the fresh produce comes in from to be able to feed into the rail and then into the port. And those are the issues that we think. And that conversation must continue being robust. It's not just a conversation that we run by KPA, it's a conversation that all of us involved in the sector, whether it's private sector or government, must have that conversation. But at the same time, is government doing enough in terms of encouraging or attracting investments, attracting, giving incentives for logistics players to actually invest? There are regulations that we feel that sometimes those regulations are discouraging players, especially international players, from coming into our sector to be able to actually invest in this. And those are the issues that we need to really think about and talk about.
Yeah, thanks very much. Let me go to Jean-Baptiste. Also in terms of moving from the progress made, as most of the panelists see, and what we all can see ourselves, not the train, but also the port, or what we see in the airport as well. But let's continue a little bit about some of the challenges and the solutions which are there, both for us as development partners, as private sector, but also towards the government of Kenya. And then I'll go back to Paul because I cut him short on the challenges. Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah, on challenges, I think a lot has been said, right? Let's be a bit factual. Population in this part of the world is one of the fastest growing in the world, right? By 2050, the East African population should have doubled. In parallel, economical growth is there as well. This is one of the fastest growing region in the world. Are the existing infrastructure sufficient to cater this growth? I think we all have the answer today. A lot has been done, yes, but if Kenya and the region want to sustain this growth, population, economical, there are a lot to be done still. On the port infrastructure, on the airport infrastructure, road, warehousing, cold chain, clearly. So if we look at opportunities, it's immense, actually. Government cannot do everything alone. And I think this will be my plea today. I would encourage heavily our friends from the government to engage more with the private sector. We are interested to invest in many different sectors. We've got the know-how, we've got the expertise that sometimes the government may not have because this is not their job. So I think there is more to be done, for example, in public-private partnerships. Current government of Kenya is pushing quite a lot in this direction, and I think this is very positive. And from our group perspective, we would really encourage it. So make sure that together, public and private sector, we sit, draw a line, draw a strategy, and we cooperate together. This is very important on the port system, supply chain, and so on. Maybe just to finish on opportunities, if you allow me, and coming back on cold chain. If we see the future of East Africa, this is definitely into the perishable and cold chain overall. where the economy will grow, where the value jobs will be coming from, is 100% from the cold chain. Today, the supply chain for perishable products of Kenya, which are of quality, Kenyan products are of quality, and they are very competitive from the moment they are produced and get out of the gate of the farm. But from the gate of the farm to the rest of the world, the logistics is extremely expensive. One of the most expensive logistics in the world. It's more expensive to move 1 kilo of tomato from Naivasha to Nairobi than in California. So is it normal? Obviously not. So in terms of cold room supply chain, there is a lot to do. Air has been helping, has been supporting the Kenyan product to go mostly to Europe. Now we strongly believe that with the new development in technology, control atmosphere containers, the rail, better port infrastructure and so on, there is a lot to convert these products from air to ocean and make these products more competitive to the world. So there are a lot of opportunities. Again, let's make sure that government and private sector sit together and cooperate better.
Thanks, Jan. I think it's an important one, and that's also the reason why we try to have in this panel both government and private sector, and to see that we can continue that debate. I'll go back to Paul. You were talking about some of the challenges, but maybe you want us all to react on some of the messages mentioned already by the panelists.
Okay, thank you. I'll also start with the C. We have what is called a draft restriction. Most of the facilities I mentioned from part number 1 to part number 14 were constructed almost 50 years ago. And during that time, the types of ships were smaller ships, and also the draft that time was small. But at the moment, we have ships which are throwing draft of up to 13 meters below the sea level or the watermark, and this one poses a challenge. Also, in terms of where you used to put one ship as a parting space, is now you require 2 of them to accommodate one ship, and which means we need to reconfigure this parting space to straighten them and to deepen them so that we can accommodate bigger ships. So that is the challenge that we already have in the older terminals. And another challenge is on the SGR in terms of movement of fresh produce. The wagons that we have at the moment are not meant for river containers. You require a genset to be mounted on a wagon so that it can generate power to the containers carrying perishable cargo. So that is something that is currently a challenge for cargo which are a bit more sensitive. But those which can withstand longer time is the one I mentioned that we are able to hold using the SGR. We already have a discussion with the government, and the government is spearheading it. And we already have a technical committee working on the same, and they already have recommendations, and those are the things now that we need to pursue. So basically, I will mention those 2 challenges, others to come later on. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm looking at Norman, if you would like to come in on this one as well, and afterwards, Dennis.
Thank you. Does it work? Hello, hello.
It's always dangerous to, as moderator, to give the mic. But,
all right. But I swear to God, I will not take over. So you do it. You do a great job. Yeah, one of the other challenges I see, I mean, about 3 years ago, I joined a quite similar discussion, like this panel discussion in Uganda, in Kampala, the capital of Uganda. Of course, you know, sorry. And back then, you know, I've seen, I was presented this very ambitious plan, how to make use of the Lake Victoria, the big lakes, how to connect the 3 countries, Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. And I have seen very ambitious master studies and master plans, etc. And I just talked to Paul before the panel discussion in regards to, you know, how does he see it from a Kenya Ports Authority perspective. Is there some, let's say, harmonized, aligned way forward? Are the governments talking to each other? Because I mean, this from a supplier perspective might be very crucial, you know, to encourage them to harmonize or to work together in order to harmonize in regards to rail span on the pier, vessel size, equipment required, etc. Maybe Paul, you can just leave a word on this. I would be very interested in.
Thank you very much, Norman, for the question. It is true. When the Uganda Railways, you see, initially it was called Uganda Railways. It was not even Kenya Railways, because when it was being constructed, the target was to reach Uganda. And this was done way back in 1890s. It reached Port Bell, that is Lake Victoria, by 10 in 1901. And we have what is called a link span. Link span is meant to accommodate the ferries and the wagons. Because once you reach Kisumu, you need to push the wagons to the ferry, and you lift the engine, and then on the other side of Mwanza or Port Bell or Bukoba, where we have the terminals, it has to be of similar nature. That is why we are talking about the link span. These link spans, because of the etching, they're already dilapidated, but we have had engagement between the three partner states who are served by the Lake Victoria, and the officers also who are manning the terminals. We have had meetings with them, and the development that is happening in Kenya, we are also seeing in part of Uganda some initiatives to also develop. Currently, as you are coming from a company that is dealing with lifting equipments, we don't have at the moment maybe particular, say, lifting equipments to serve the smaller vessels that are applying the Lake Victoria. What is happening is most of the activities is labor intensive when it comes to loading, and it will take some time to have a ship load. But for what is going through the wagons, that one is a bit faster. But people will want to utilize space in every vessels, and they will want to fill some cargo in the spaces which are left unoccupied by wagons. So it is true we don't have facilities which are similar in all the three terminals in terms of lifting. And for Kenya side, I know we already have equipment which we went, the facility was commissioned. We shifted some cargo handling equipment to Kisumu. That is the reach takers and the mobile cranes and forklifts. Thank you.
Satisfied? Good. Then we go to Dennis.
Maybe another challenge which we should highlight or need to discuss is the implementation of new rules and regulation every period coming up from various different parties. And I'm not judging whether right or wrong. What I'm judging is the communication about these rules and regulation, and then the implementation of it. And that, quite often we have seen it in the past, is causing chaos, and chaos causes uncertainty, and this uncertainty and insecurity is shying investors away, yeah, and leaves question marks on our market. And I think that is something which the stakeholders and the government authorities needs to address, that the implementation of new rules and regulation is done in a proper way and properly communicated, so that you can also sensitize your customers and the investors basically into this country. I think that's one of the biggest challenge we have seen in the past.
Thanks very much. I'm looking at Axel, since you mentioned in the previous question about progress, yes, a lot of progress made, but still a lot of things to be done. But maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that one. And then I'll go. I'm just looking if somebody from Trademark East Africa or the European Union is in the room, because I think there are some answers in the new BEEP program which has been signed yesterday. Can you say something about it? No? Then I'll try to do it myself. Axel, first to you.
Yeah, thank you. I want to elaborate a bit on what Dennis said. It's regulations. It's very often it's administration that slows down the process. But we talk about digitalization today, right? And it is easily said that let's just put a digital solution in place and everything will be faster. It won't be, right? I think where we need to think a lot deeper, and it's also on our side as service providers, is not just putting a digital solution in place, but challenging the process that's in place. How do we simplify a process, right? Dennis mentioned the documentation when he first came here. We had a lot of runners going back and forth, getting documents stamped, getting documents signed. This all can be done digitally nowadays. It needs to be a robust solution, but it needs to be developed, and there needs to be alignment with everyone, with the government, with the tax authorities or customs, with the shippers and the logistics providers or the shipping lines eventually. And I think in the interest of everyone, of providing an end-to-end supply chain, providing visibility, simplified solutions, I think we're all in the boat, and this is where perhaps forums like these can help, right? It's not just about representing your own interest, because if the shipping line has a digital solution that I can ride on, it helps me, and eventually it helps the shipper, it helps Kenya, it helps the EU, because what we want eventually, and I think the discussion point here is, how do we enhance the speed from what Jean-Baptiste said, for, let's say, exports out of Kenya to get into Europe faster than they do today. And that might be one area. So collaboration is clearly a very, very important point. And this is where we all have room for improvement, I believe.
Thanks very much. I'll hand over to my co-moderator for a moment.
Thank you. I have a question for Baptiste. I think is the port of Mombasa ready to receive the bigger vessels? Are they ready in terms of technology, in terms of equipment, in terms of the dredge that it has, and of course the channel? There are challenges that you are facing. At the same time, how do we deal with the inefficiencies? Because you operate in several other ports across the world. How do we deal with the issues around inefficiencies? How do we improve our processes? How we enhance transparency? Because I think the issues that are coming through are that our systems are not very transparent. How we come up with policies and regulations and how we implement them are not very transparent. And they need to be all-inclusive in terms of negotiations on how these are done. And is our transport systems resilient enough to be actually able to take up the new challenges that are coming up in the global perspective, and the kind of vessels that we are receiving, the kind of operations that we are seeing? Are they actually being responsive enough to be able to see use of technology and digitization in ensuring that we actually get efficiency?
Thanks, Gilbert. Actually, very important question, very crucial. I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, what do you want to do with the port, and where do we want altogether to bring the Kenyan economy? As it has been mentioned already, Kenya is importing 4 containers and exporting 1 only. I think we should focus on this only, right? This is where the main issue is today and where most of the opportunities are. A country like Kenya, with competitive energy, young, talented workforce, fertile soil, and so on, should be importing 3 containers and exporting 2. This should be the ratio. So how do we achieve this? All of this a big part of this is going through the logistics infrastructure overall, and port is the backbone of this logistic infrastructure. And this is often an example that I'm giving to my fellow partners at the government when we discuss. Just take the example of the most advanced economies in the world. Take Singapore, take China, take the UAE, take the Netherlands. Why did they succeed so fast and so in a sustainable way? Through the port. Through the port, an efficient port. Take Singapore, second port of the world, Dubai port, number 9 in the world, for very small population. Rotterdam, take Tanger Med in Morocco. Tanger Med is almost fully automatized. There was nothing in Tanger Med before the port was created. And now you've got a huge special economic zone around Tanger Med. IKEA is coming there to open shops for consumers, but also for production. So we need to focus on the port as a tool to boost the Kenyan economy, and not as a final objective. And too often, here in Kenya, we see the port facility as a final objective, which I think is wrong. So let's focus at the port into an efficient tool. Don't be scared to make this port more efficient by bringing more automation. It has been done everywhere in the world. We know it's not easy. Northern European ports, North American ports have been suffering with labor issues and so on. But if you look at it, all the ports who have been doing this transition from manual to technological have boosted, sorry, I don't know where it's coming from. So all these ports who have done this transition from manual to more automation, more technology, have boosted their economy big time. So to answer your question, a lot comes from efficiency, a lot comes from image as well. What is the reputation of Singapore port today? Why do international investors are going to Singapore or to Dubai or to Morocco today? Because there is a port of reputation, there are transparent regulations, open dialogue with the authorities, reputable port operator. If we want Kenya to become a manufacturing country and a strong exporting country, to bring forex, to create jobs, we need to question ourselves on which image we want to give to the world. And a lot of this comes through the port.
Can I add something to this, perhaps?
Of course.
Maybe just to add on to what Jean-Baptiste said, I think, and also Gilbert asked it, can the shipping lines bring bigger vessels in? And I'm not exactly sure if this is going to solve the problem, and I just want to share with the audience, because we as a company, we deal with the containers. They come off the ship, and then, let's say they come up to Nairobi. The ship arrives on day 0. It takes you 3 days to customs clear, right? And basically ideally at the end of day 3, sometimes even on day 4, that's when then the container goes on the rail or on the truck. And if it goes on the truck, in particular if we're talking about reefers, for example, because that's the only, that's in many cases the only option we have. It takes about a day and a half. So ideally, the ship arrives on a Sunday night. You will not get the cargo into Nairobi until ideally Friday night, right? And that's the best case scenario if you have a weekend in between. It takes you 2 additional days. And I think that is in particular a benchmark we should look at, or Kenya needs to look at, and we as logistics providers and shippers and shipping lines need to look at to optimize this, because the benchmark internationally is a very, very different one. We're talking very often, it's a matter of hours, perhaps 1 or 2 days. And that's, I think, where a lot of cost savings along the supply chain can come in, which will make Kenya, on the exports in particular, a lot more competitive.
Thanks. I'm looking at Gilbert if you have other questions for the panelists. Otherwise, I suggest before going to opportunities, business opportunities, to check with the audience in terms of challenges and opportunities. Gilbert, any other questions for now?
I think it's not really a question, it's a comment. It's out there for us to be able to actually look into the issues, the challenges that we have. But how do we then transfer the knowledge that we have, especially for the players who are actually playing the global maritime environment, and we have them here. How do you transfer that capacity and that technology to us, to Kenya, so that the Port of Mombasa or our corridor can actually be able to benefit? Because at the end of the day, Kenya does not operate as a maritime nation, as a maritime institution, whether it's a port or the Port of Mombasa or the activities that happen around the port do not operate singly against a benchmark that is East African. It's against the world standards. So when you bring in a ship, that ship should be worked on against the world standards that are being looked at. How do we get, because when you look at performance of ports across Africa, none from East Africa actually appears for container ports. I don't think any from Africa appears among the top 100. We have a port in, I think, Morocco, South Africa, Egypt, and I think Togo lately appearing. None from East Africa appears, and that is an issue that how do we get there? And how can we be assisted as Kenya to be able to get there? How can we have that conversation to be able to get us to where we want to get to?
Thanks very much. Maybe Paul or others want to react on it, but I'm just checking with the audience if there are questions or comments on opportunities and challenges. I'll start with IFC, and then I'll go to European Business Council. Sorry. And please, if you take the floor, introduce yourself so that everybody else knows who you are as well.
Thanks. Is that okay? Yeah. Can I carry?
Just try it. Is the mic working? Yes, it works.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Joris. So my name is Sarah Ochieng with IFC. I work on Eastern and Southern Africa. So it's more of a comment and more to Paul and linking to what Jean-Baptiste said. So when you look at Kenya from an industrial policy perspective, so we are anchoring our industrial transformation on special economic zones and towards boosting manufacturing as a share of GDP. And when you look at Vision 2030, the initial thinking was to have a special economic zone around the ports, so in Lamu, in Mombasa, Dongo Kundu, as well as in Kisumu. Of course, that has moved a bit, so we have a special economic zone in Naivasha. So this policy has been in place for the last 10 years. But the truth of the matter is, special economic zones have not taken off in Kenya as envisaged under Vision 2030. And when I listen to this distinguished panel here, I think one of the things that's coming out very clearly is the issue of logistics. So if you're not able to push in and push out very quickly, how will the country realize this ambitious agenda of special economic zones to create 2 million jobs by 2030? That will not happen. But number two, to boost manufacturing as a share of GDP from the 9% up until 15%. So it's a question for you as Kenya Ports Authority, because you're controlling all of these ports, whether it's Lamu, Mombasa, Dongo Kundu, Naivasha Inland Ports, or Kisumu. So what sort of, so I guess my question to you, and maybe, I don't know, to the panel as well, given the examples that you have from other countries, is what can KPA do realistically as the manager of ports in Kenya to really transform this? And I know you talked about, I think, 2 million TEUs and all of that. I mean, when you talk about Singapore and all that, this is nothing compared to Singapore. So what plans does KPA have to improve the logistics? I know the policy sits at the Transport Ministry, but I think you're here.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Let me go first to Darren, and then I'll hand back to Paul and to Jean-Baptiste or others from the panel.
Thank you, Joris. Darren Gillen, Chairman of the European Business Council. I arrived slightly late, so forgive me if you've already discussed Lamu Port. I took a delegation from the European Business Council there, I think just pre-COVID, and a lot of the talk this morning seems to be very heavily focused on Mombasa. One of the things that became apparent when we were there, and then subsequently afterwards, with the new corridor and the safety of goods that would possibly come into Lamu and then move out What is the current situation there? Is there real business opportunities for companies to get involved in Lamu Port? And what has been done to try and fix the security situation so that logistics companies can have confidence that if they ship into Lamu Port, which a lot of money has been invested in, is their goods going to be safe? Yeah, that was just my question.
Thanks very much. I see that Jean-Baptiste and Dennis want to react on this one. And then I'll go back to Paul.
Can I take this one?
Yes.
On Lamu? I know it's not my port, but since we tried Lamu, I think we are well placed to comment on this. Again, fair question. I would like to start with one point, which is important. Sovereignty of a country starts with multi-port facilities, right? You reduce your sovereignty if you are dependent on one port. This is something important to mention. Look, the UAE, it's a small country. How many ports do they have? Between Abu Dhabi, Jebel Ali, Sharjah, etc., etc. So having two ports is already, it's an important step, and I think this was good for Kenya to invest into this. Now, obviously, there are challenges. Lamu is very north of the country. The corridor is not ready yet. In terms of safety and so on, I would say we are not there yet. As user of the port, we would not engage ourselves on the corridor. Nevertheless, considering the challenges we can face in the rest of the region in other ports, could be in Mombasa, could be Dar es Salaam, could be Zanzibar, Lamu can be, let's say, a buffer port to Mombasa. And if this is done in a clever way, you could use Lamu in combination with Mombasa to create a logistic hub for the region. Lamu cannot work without Mombasa, and at the end of the day, if you look at 10, 15 years ahead, eventually Mombasa should not work without Lamu, should be a combined opportunities. And as shipping line, as direct user of the port, again, maybe we are not there at that time, but we just had a call last weekend in Lamu. We discharged 300 containers over there after, I think, 1 year of non-operation in Lamu. So we tried the port. We had actually better productivity in Lamu port than in Mombasa, which also should question KPA. And it was a good experience. So now this same vessel is back to Mombasa. We are reloading again 300 containers, and we are back to Lamu this weekend to discharge again 300 containers. So you can use Lamu more as a transshipment port for time being, but it's not bad. It's a good complement to Mombasa if you do it in a clever way. It can work.
Thanks. Dennis, do you want to come in on this one for now? And then I'll go to Paul, and I'm looking at the audience still.
I mean, on this one, JB, I mean, if you use Lamu as a transshipment port, which obviously makes sense with all the infrastructure which is not yet there apart from KPA infrastructure, but then we have to compete with the Middle East. We have to compete with Jeddah, with Jebel Ali, with King Abdullah. And that means we have to have incentives there. We have to have government backups there in order to be competitive to the Middle Eastern transshipment port. Simple as it is.
Just to complete on Lamu, and Paul can confirm, but if you take the overall capacity of Lamu port today, it might be as big as Mombasa. Huh? So you've got a lot of space there. So again, if this is properly handled, if you've got the right equipment, ship-to-shore gantry cranes and so on, this can work. Problem, if you take Mombasa, we are happy when KPA reach 15, 16 moves per hour and per crane, right? Lamu, last weekend, you did perform 18 moves per hour per crane, which was great. But take a port, Singapore, Shanghai, Jebel Ali, Tangimed, we speak about 40, 50 moves per crane per hour. So this is what we call international standard. This is what will attract international investors. So from 15 moves per hour per crane today, we need to almost triple this productivity. And this is where government of Kenya, KPA, and private sector, I think, need to work more hand by hand.
Thanks very much. Paul, big ambitions. Also questions from Sarah and others.
Thank you, Sarah, for asking a very interesting question about people have waited for so long to realize the benefits of special economic zones. And I will say now we are almost at it. Because when you look at Naivasha, initially there was no terminal, there was no connectivity to Naivasha. We now have a facility that is up and running. And I can confirm to you that we have seen people already putting a lot of interest in Naivasha. Already we have a farm that is already now doing construction. They are doing some fabrications of the equipment they will want to come and install in Naivasha. And we expect them to come in with about 2,000 TEUs of materials to run the business. And I pray that the company was not affected by the earthquake because it is a company from Turkey. And I believe all is well so that we realize that potential. We have also talked about what will port do to ensure that special economic zones thrive. Currently, we have Tongo Kundu that has been in the pipeline for a very long time. It was in the master plan, but now also we are now realizing that it is now at the final stage of beginning the construction of the parts at the Tongo Kundu, which means very soon we shall start seeing interested parties coming to set up their industries in that particular area. A support in terms of putting up the infrastructure, I think also what is critical for us is to ensure we improve on productivity. And currently we are working on the renewing the terminal operating systems. That has been there from 2007 when we went digital in terms of documentation. Initially, before 2007, a document could be stamped up to almost 34 times. You will find 34 stamps in one document, even it was not eligible to read. But when we went paperless, we saw a lot of improvement in terms of the duration cargo was taking to be cleared from almost 21 days to almost an average of 4 days, which is a great improvement. So we are upgrading the terminal operating system. And yesterday, we went live on what is called eCitizen. I believe we sent communication to Kenya Ships Agent Association to give what the clearing fraternity. Now people are able to do their business through the eCitizen, that is a government platform for paying for the services. And you're also able to track your cargo using the same platform. So those are the improvements that the port is doing to ensure we meet the expectation of our users. I think basically that is it. And also for Lamu, you have mentioned about security, and I thank my neighbor here, Jean, because he has answered that question in terms of the fear on insecurity. The government agencies, multi-government agencies normally have meetings to review the security situations, and there has been a lot of improvement in terms of security in Lamu. What could be hampering maybe is the connectivity to the hinterlands. The roads are still under construction, and once those ones are completed, then we shall expect maybe to see more vessels. But at the moment, the opportunities which are there is for transshipment cargo. And Lamu in future will be the hub. Given the population within this region, cargo that is coming all the way, instead of going to Salalah, in Oman, instead of going to Dubai, I think the future is in Lamu. Thank you.
Paul, and my co-moderator want to add some things, and then I think we take a couple of more questions. The gentleman in the back, and you, and what more, before we move into the last part about business opportunities.
Okay, thank you. One about Lamu, I think there are opportunities in Lamu. Lamu has capacity for 32 paths. The government has constructed 3. There are still others to be constructed. So there is opportunity for PPP to be able to actually invest in some of those. But I think to get to a point where Lamu actually has a transshipment port, is responsive to the levels of Salala and the other ports that we are seeing between 35 and 40 moves. One thing that is required there is equipment, modern equipment and systems that can be used so that shipping lines can be able to actually operate within the port, and Lamu actually acts as a support system for the Port of Mombasa. But for the special economic zones, I do agree with Sarah that this has been a talk for very long. We have moved from Dongokundu to Naivasha, back to Dongokundu, back to Naivasha. We've not implemented. One of the disadvantages that we have in this region, especially for Kenya, is that the first customer of the port is 500 kilometers away. The first customer of the port is actually in Nairobi and beyond. So that logistics of inefficiencies between the port and Nairobi affects our productivity as a region. And therefore, I think the opportunity that is provided by Dongokundu, that is in Mombasa, as an SEZ, for industries to be actually established there and actually increase our volumes is something that is very big. And that is something that I think we need to focus a lot on in terms of investing in Dongokundu to be able to give us volumes, and also investing in Naivasha to be able to give us the hinterland volumes that are coming in for export purposes.
Thanks very much. Let me, since the panel is only male, let me go back to Sarah first to keep that balance, and then I'll have a couple of other people coming with questions, and then Dennis, I'll get back to you. Yeah, Sarah.
Paul, just a follow-up question for you. You talked about your services going live on eCitizen. My understanding was, and I hope the guy from Trademark is here, with the support of Trademark and IFC, we did support government to develop CaneTrade. So does that mean you will not use CaneTrade platform anymore for the single window?
Gentleman in the back, and then we'll move our way back forward. And introduce yourself, please.
Hi, good morning, or is it afternoon? My name is Benjamin, All Marine Services. I'm a freight forwarder. I want to compliment KPA for their link on eCitizen also. That doesn't mean that CaneTrade goes off. We do a lot of businesses with CaneTrade. It's a single window system actually targeting a lot of government agencies. And mine is just a concern. There's a player who is not here. I think that's Kenya Railways. We're having serious issues between Mombasa, Nairobi, and beyond. I'd give you a very typical example that he had in December during Christmas. It took us 2 weeks to get a container from Mombasa to ICD. CMA CGM billed me $242 for demurrage. Are these agencies not speaking to each other? I'm happy, shippers, you're here, council is here. Are these agencies not speaking to each other? Because I don't understand how we can get a container from Mombasa to Nairobi, 500 kilometers away, in 2 weeks, and we're using the standard gauge system.
Thanks very much. Let's go to Marike, my colleague from the Dutch Embassy. I think Axel also mentioned that about that collaboration between the different institutions, which is very important. Marike.
Hi, so my name is Marike, work for the Dutch Embassy. I think it's quite clear that there's a lot of opportunities, challenges as well, but there's also one sort of big elephant in the room, which is, to me, the sustainability aspect of all of it. Lots of freight right now goes per airplane to Europe, which is also accounting for a lot of the trade and the forex balance that was also mentioned between Kenya and the EU. We also know that the shift to sea freight will help in reducing those CO2 emissions. At the same time, we also see a movement amongst consumers, and some of the biggest supermarkets in the Netherlands and in Germany have announced already that they won't be accepting any fresh produce that comes in by air anymore. So how do you see that transition to a more sustainable way of transporting goods to Europe? Thanks.
Thanks very much. Let's get a couple more questions. 1, 2, 3. I saw you nodding already. So.
No, actually not completely nodding, because there's a big discussion ongoing whether a flower grown in the Netherlands is actually producing more CO2 than a flower growing in Kenya. And I think that's also regarding, Willem van der Zanden from SIVA. And Gilbert is saying that he's very passionate about the cold chain logistics for Kenya. And I think that's where I wanted to ask the question. Do you see cold chain and sea freight as a complementary factor for the perishable industry in Kenya, or do you see it as a complete shift? Because we've already seen, indeed, like Marika says, that Aldi and Lidl have said, we want only to accept cargo that is being sea freighted, till the moment the shelves are empty, by the way, because then we are allowed to fly again. But how do you see that shift, and where do you see the industry shift to? Because obviously for the cold chain logistics for flowers, you need 0.5 degrees in a cold store. And currently there's no cold stores available close to the flower farms that can actually do this. So how do you see that being developed, and how do you see that then link into an SDR? How do you see that linked into an EPZ? Do we actually need to ship the full mango or the pineapple? Or should we do it the same way Ghana is doing with mangoes to Tesco's that are already cut up, and we don't do the shipment of the nut and the skin anymore, but the finished product? And do we see a shift there?
Questions, Jules, and forgot your name. Ghana. Yes, Jules, first here in front. Well. Okay. Shall we first answer them? Who would like to start? Paul, and then back to my co-moderator.
Thank you. Let me start with the first question from Sarah about the e-citizens replacing Kentrade. Let me say e-citizen will not replace Kentrade. This is for us, it's more of payments, whereby in the e-citizens it is more of documentation. No, in the country, it's more of documentation. It's a platform for forwarding documents through a single window. So payments, which is under different functionality, will be done through e-citizens. But it is only to give more avenues for people to be able to pay us. In terms of collaborations between Kenya Railways, the gentleman who asked the question, he shifted.
Yeah, he just left the room. Everybody wants to answer anyway.
So for the benefits of others, we are working closely with Kenya Railways. We do daily planning with them. And we already have also programs to improve availability of wagons. And it might not be only Kenya Railways that is causing these challenges. When we have shortage of wagons, containers end up going to the yards, and then tracking them becomes a problem. And I mentioned earlier on about improving our systems, the terminal operating systems, so that we can have all these functionalities in terms of yard management, to ensure that at any given time you are able to track where the container is. And when you require it, you can easily get it instead of maybe wasting more time trying to locate the container. So those are the challenges that we already have solutions, and we expect to see some improvement. And we are also working with, apart from the port, I'm seated next to the chairman of the port charter, and we normally have meetings together to ensure that we sort out these emerging problems. Thank you.
Very much. Gilbert, you want to answer on Willem's question from Siva?
Yes. I think going forward, we cannot really say it's a complete shift because there's a process. We need to build our cold chain logistics, the hinterland for aggregation, for connectivity between now the aggregation centers and the railways, then to the port. But ultimately, that is where we want to head. And the projections that we have as private sector, as an industry, between the logistics providers and the fresh produce institutions, associations that represent fresh produce, is to move by 2030, move about 30% of our fresh produce to by sea, and probably beyond that 50%. Currently we move averagely about 2-3%. So it's a very low number, but we need to build our back-end logistics framework to be able to actually take up on this. Just want to respond to the issue of Kentrade and eCitizen. Kentrade actually is a window that is being implemented. Does the eCitizen, does the communication from KPA replace that? I think it was not clear. Basically, what eCitizen will do is it provides a payment platform for us to be able to use when we are paying for some of the services. So I don't think it replaces. Single window still remains the central point where a lot of the transactions will be done from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks very much. I'm looking at Dennis or Norman if you want to react still on this discussion, also sustainability, etc. Dennis? Yep.
On the carbon emission, what we are doing as a port, we are now we have what is called green port policy. And our objective is to have most of the ships, when they come to the port, they don't run on diesels. They switch off their engines and use the shore power. That is what is called cold ironing, to generate power to the ship, so that you switch it off when it is alongside, and then you start when you are on voyage. And in terms of for the fruits, let me say currently we are handling fresh produce through the port. It started during the Corona or COVID period because it became very expensive for fresh produce to be transported by air. And we saw an increase from that time. And those who tried that time to transport by sea decided to continue using the sea because they saw the benefits. So it is something that we need to improve on the experience that we have already gotten. And it is working. We all need to iron out maybe some specific issues in terms of do we have warehouses, cold storage facilities for consolidation, for blending, for packaging? Yes, we don't have at the moment because this is a new stream of business, and that is an area that we really need to target. And during the study that we did, we realized that around the port area and around the terminals, we could be having challenges of space, and we need to work on the same to see what could be the next possible areas to put up these cold storage facilities, and what will be who will be operating it? Do we have to go for partnership with players in the fresh produce areas, or the port has to maintain? So those are the issues now that are coming up. Thank you.
Maybe to comment on the SEZ aspect which was mentioned here. I mean, we are right now in a unique situation, and we should not always look at the disadvantages. There is since 1 year, the Ukraine war, whereby international companies have lost a market of about 300 million people, yes, when we talk of the European companies. And what we have seen as Schenker in the last year is a very high interest of these European companies to invest into Kenya. And there is, whenever we then explain them the concept of SEZ and highlight the opportunities and the possibilities, these companies are very eager to invest in this country. And that's where we have to finally walk the talk and develop these SEZs and present them so that there is a platform where international European companies are able to invest. Naivasha, yes, that's more for a market regionally. When we talk to these companies, they are looking at Kenya as a production for Africa or even for the Middle East. So for them, Dokokundu makes absolutely sense. Yes, and these are German companies we talk to, French companies we talk to, and these are established companies producing all over in the world who are now eager to come into Kenya, invest here, and produce here for the international market.
Thanks, Dennis. We're moving towards the last session, and that's very much. More questions coming in. 3 questions, and then I'll go to the panelists also about the business opportunities. Let me start with the gentleman here, and then to Jules and my Danish colleague.
Thank you, Joyce. I hope everybody can hear me. Any manufacturers in the room? So I think I hold the mantle over there. Of course, we're talking about the port capacity and so many things, you know, that the port is going to handle about 2 million TEUs in a year, etc., etc. And we've spoken about the infrastructure deficit that we currently have in the country. And SGR, again, single lane. I don't know why. Lamu Port, I think right from the beginning, we had our doubts, and I still have my doubts, to be very honest. Yes, you have a port there, and you have a port in Dar es Salaam, and Tanzania is part of EAC, and we are part of COMESA. The growth has to be organic in terms of port. You're investing a lot of public money into it, taking loans and grants. It can come at a point of time, but for 2 million TEUs that you're saying, and you won't even handle that, probably last year, KP handled about 1.4 million TEUs. So how do you now take advantage of this 2 million TEU capacity per year? And we are also talking about Lamu. My name is Karan. I'm from Gola Closures. I head Gola Closures East Africa. We are a manufacturing company. Most of our raw material is imported. And in the last, in my past life, I've been 10 years in Kenya. And in my past life, I have dealt in logistics, engineering, built a lot of infrastructure, part of Kisumu Oil Jetty, ports in Tanga, Mozambique, also, you know, other port rehabilitation works. I think the fish jetty is also being constructed by one of the companies of Alpha Group. So that's where I worked. So what we're essentially looking and seeing in the, you know, in this discussion, and I'm very surprised, Joris, you mentioned that we don't have a full house. I think more manufacturers should have been here today because we are the ones affected the most. A challenge to the shipping lines first. There was a time we were, you know, stocking raw material for 45 days. Now, in the current scenario, when we don't have dollars, and we are buying dollars at 130, 134 shillings versus 124 as base rate set by the Central Bank of Kenya, it's a huge disaster for us, to be honest. And I cannot keep increasing prices because the polymer prices went up last year. And right now, 1st of April, the electricity prices go up in Kenya. Last year, 83% of the energy mix in Kenya was from renewables. And we don't understand why the prices are going up. Why can't KPLC just take a grant? But of course, that's a separate issue. But you know, all of this boils down around Kenya's Vision 2030 of the manufacturing agenda. And sometimes I feel that the government is still dilly-dallying on this all the time. In the past 10 years, with the previous government, we set a momentum and then we stop. We make SGR single line, why don't we make it double line? Why did we not upgrade the Rift Valley Railway, the lunatic line, all the way? It goes all the way to Uganda. We didn't do that. We have other infrastructure in place that just needed upgradation, but we did not do that. Port of Mombasa, you're making so many ports, going up to 2 million, What is the need of Lamu port? Monetize this first. Make better infrastructure, put that money into better roads and infrastructure, monetize it. But now we have more loans than anything else. The shipping line side, stocking 45 days. Today, my raw material comes in 25 days in India, but it's a cyclic effect. We spoke about the challenges at the port, 7 days. So I was just making some data. The biggest challenge that I see, and it's not a biggest challenge, sorry, it's a challenge that I see, and I think it's a small one to counter, is that the customs don't work on Saturdays and Sundays. We lose 2,520 hours in a year. Most of my cargo, as a manufacturer, all the OEM manufacturers, when I have machine breakdowns and I have to import spares, it comes by air. I'm not shipping it in. I need it now. And I don't keep stock of it. It's expensive. Then I lock in more in my networking capital into just stocking more spares. Raw material is already expensive. We pay in dollars. So why can't we sort that out? We've been talking a lot about port, and we know the challenges. Saturday, Sunday is not working, and then the container comes 7 days, 6 days later, and towards December, it's even worse. But what about air shipments into JKIA? Why don't we work on Saturdays and Sundays? For some reason, all the planes that carry our cargo land on a Friday. For some reason, this is what I've noticed. We import a lot of raw material, spares from Europe. 2 days, the machines are stopped. That machine is not working for 2 days. Whereas I could have taken it out on a Saturday morning and start working. Gawler Closures works 24/7, 365 days in a year. Why can't a small skeleton staff of KPA or the customs work on Saturday and Sundays? If we are looking at this agenda of Vision 2030, the manufacturing agenda, which is going to bring all that we're talking about here, better livelihoods for the people, more economic, resurrection, GDP going up from 5 to 7 to 9%, whatever. It's all to do with manufacturing. And manufacturing involves a lot of things. Not just me, even fresh produce guys are manufacturing, literally, like pack houses and et cetera, So,
very short.
I know, but I think as a manufacturer, we are suffering the most because of these logistical challenges. We cannot bring the cost of production down. Hence, we cannot bring the cost of, the sale point of that product down in the market unless we address a lot of these issues and we don't keep the momentum. Why do we stop all the time? We have to be aggressive.
Thanks. I gave you the floor longer because you are the manufacturing, and I think that's exactly what I said in the beginning, that link between everything what we do here in Kenya and the link to logistics and freight is so incredibly important. So thanks for your intervention. Jules and Karina quickly, and then I'll first go back to the panelists and we'll see whether we have some time, otherwise we'll have to do it after the session. Jules, very short, please.
Yeah, I'll try to be very short. Jules Dullehey, I'm CEO of SEA Security, private security company. And obviously that's what the question is going to be about. To what extent can the private security help to increase efficiency? I'm not talking about LAMU specifically, but more in general. We are applying, people think with private security about man guarding and physical security, but I'm talking about technology and applying systems. We are doing tracking, tracing systems. If we tag a container, I see all kinds of other tags and other devices on it, but why can't you combine it into one? To tag a container, cold chain issues, you can put a device on it that measures the temperature, go from A to B, KRA tags, KRA systems. If you combine it, I think it would be much more efficient and could help a lot to reduce your delivery times. So I'm offering you a solution, but indeed it requires cooperation with government, with private sector, and with other industries. ICT and security, I think, could be a good opportunity.
Thanks. Let's go to Karina, my colleague from the Danish Embassy. And then I'll start with the panel on the opportunities. I'll start with you, Norman.
Thank you, Joris, and thank you to the panel for the insights. I have two questions, and I'll direct the first one to Paul and Gilbert. I think we've heard a lot generally about the opportunities, the challenges. It would be interesting to know whether or not there is an actual understanding of what is required, infrastructure, investments, and the like, technology transfer, and anything else needed to actually deliver on the economic growth ambitions and expectations for Kenya and the East African region. If that overview is there, what does that look like? I think that would help illustrate where investors can come in and where partnerships can come in. And then a question for the industry players that are on the stage. A couple of you have mentioned that you need to work together and that people need to work together between private sector and public sector, and the PPP legal framework has been completed by the government now, so there's also an active incentive push from the government of Kenya to do this. But are you guys ready to cooperate? I think there is, on the logistics side and shipping side as well, there's a lot of competition in Kenya. For good reason, it is the hub for the rest of the region. But how do you also see yourselves coming to the table in order to grow the pie for everyone involved?
Thanks, Karina. There was one last question from the gentleman over there, and then I suggest, Gilbert, if you agree, that we'll ask the panelists to say something about the opportunities, but also react on whatever you want to react on still from the panelists. Is that fine?
My name is Harrison. This question is directed to Clement and Paul, because I have not heard anybody mention about the export of ore. We have a lot of iron ore. I don't know what things have been put in place for export of ore, because we have facilities for import, but we do not have any facility for export of ore, iron ore and minerals. That's about it.
Much. We'll try to get the answers in the last interventions from the panelists. Let me start with you, Norman, also about the opportunities you see and maybe some reactions on that one. You like my mic, huh?
I like your mic most. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Referring to opportunities, I mean, as an equipment supplier, I don't want to spend that much time on that. For me, joining this panel discussion was more up to understanding really the opportunities you see in Kenya in the logistics and the processes, and then of course to feed that back into our let's say production development process to see where we can enhance our products. But what I would like to bring across is, and I would like to echo your name was, I believe, Marik, and also in same line, President Ruto, I mean Marik and President Ruto, that there's only one growth, and this must be green. And I would like to welcome you to get together with us, because I mean, we are a family-owned business and we are very much into green technology, be it we have very ambitious electrification, decarbonization targets we've set ourselves. We are collaborating quite close to each other, with each other, with APMT, Maersk, who set himself also very ambitious net zero greenhouse targets we would like to achieve in a collaboration. And also when it comes to digitization, I mean, this is also what I heard today, even throughout this panel discussion. Then it's also one of the major pillars in order to enhance logistical processes. So we offer a range of products in order to enhance that. I don't want to elaborate on that because it's not a sales show. Yeah, this is how I see it.
Yeah, also in what Marika, the question was to answer that a bit, and also for opportunities, where can we diversify ourselves from the broad spec of competition in the market. And I think one part is that we as international companies are offering a network. We are already, to a certain extent, we are consultants to the customers to when they want to enter a market or when they enter PPP with an authority or a project in Kenya. The other part is the integrity aspect, which is always coming as a question up here in this market. And then the sustainability. And I think there we, as international companies, who are also local companies here, have an upper hand on it. We have programs running to reduce the emission, to together with, as an example, with the Lufthansa airline. We have programs running with the CMA jointly with other shipping lines. And we are very well aware of it, that our sector contributes quite a lot. I mean, it's somewhere between 5 to 10% in terms of carbon emissions globally, what our sector causes or can help to reduce as well. And that's what we are trying to do. Yeah, e-mobility will be a topic here, and it will come here. We should not close our eyes. Yes, we will have in the future, and also Schenker will have in the future, e-trucks running in Nairobi. It's clear. There's no way around it. Yes, we have the sun, we have solar power. We can charge our trucks, and our vehicles will be E. Very clear. We cannot divert from that. Opportunities are there in all the sectors which we have heard. We have to grab them. But I think what also needs to be clear to the investors in the European Union, I think, do not treat us different or do not treat us any special. We are not. If you make your conscious decision to invest somewhere, you, as an entrepreneur, weigh your risks against the return on investment, and if you think Kenya is the right place to do, then you invest. Yes, we are not special than any other country. Sometimes you need a longer breath, or you might need a bit of a deeper pocket, but that's all your entrepreneurial risk. So I think that's what we also have to learn, that, hey, we have to provide the field for investments. And I think these are the opportunities.
Thanks very much, very clear. Let's go to Axel. And I think some of your points, Axel, about innovations, ICT, but also collaboration, echoed well with the questions from the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Joris, and I think I want to thank everyone for the very good input, and I think great questions. I want to actually answer one question that was around security. That came up. Obviously, the security is in logistics, transportation and supply chain an extremely important factor. However, when we look at transportation, why is it not something that's in our face all the time? It has to do with the fact that perhaps there are limited liabilities. It's how the industry is regulated, be it for air freight and ocean freight. There are insurance policies in place. Now, security is an extremely, if not one of the most important factors. But where is it even more important for companies like ours is in an area that we have not even touched at all today, and that's the supply chain and the warehousing part. If we talk about supply chain, warehousing is an extremely important factor. So if for us as a logistics provider, we operate a warehouse, and be it for exports, for imports, it doesn't really matter. This means we take custody of someone else's goods. And if we lose them, it makes us liable at the end of the day. So for us at CEVA Logistics, we have the priorities that we have long before profitability of our business, which is very important, is really for us health and safety of our people or everyone who is in our facilities, the goods of our customers that we take, and then maybe comes to profitability. If I fail on 1 and 2, my profitability is in jeopardy anyways. So this is where perhaps there would be opportunities. There are solutions in place today. I think CCTV surveillance. I think it is normal to have a guard at the warehouse, but I think what other technologies would there be to track the security of goods? I think there might be obviously opportunities. Just taking into considerations everything that has been said, I want to be extremely optimistic now and assume we get together in 10 years. And in 10 years, all these problems that we just addressed are all solved. Lamu port is flourishing. Mombasa has no more challenges. They have 50 moves an hour. Hopefully, fresh produce will no longer be shipped by air freight. What does that mean for Kenya, and what does it mean for the trade with the EU? Obviously, Kenya, as it was said before, or East Africa has 320 million people, and it's not a matter of decades until we hit the 500 million people mark. It's probably a matter of years. With the GDP per capita growing, I think Kenya and the rest of East Africa, if we're really optimistic, will become a huge consumer market, right? And I think this is where it will attract a lot of attention globally. I think more investors would like to come into would like to participate in that. And it will also attract multiple other areas and requirements in logistics. And not only the maritime part that was discussed, we hardly mentioned air freight. I think technology is something that gets imported a lot. Everybody here holds a mobile phone. You can be sure that there's a 90% chance that this did not come in a container. It came by air freight. All the technical gadgets we see in the background here, I can assure you this all came by air freight, most probably, because it's high value goods. I met with some automotive companies yesterday, and they are importing spare parts. So there are other levers and other areas where there's opportunities for the logistics supply chain industries. But once these challenges will be resolved, and I hope they will be, right, then I'm pretty sure we will be facing other challenges. But I look forward to these, and I hope we'll get there very soon. Thank you all.
Yeah, I took some notes, and I'll try to answer a bit in a pragmatic way to some questions which have been raised. First, on sustainability, very good point on cold ironing from Paul. I mean, we would like to promote it big time. First, because it is bringing, obviously, cleaner air for the local population, but also because this is saving quite a lot of fuel when we are at quay. But now, concretely, what is the status? Cold ironing investment requires massive investments. It's extremely expensive. You need to bring more power to the quays, to the berth. So concretely, where does KPA stand in this? And what about ships as well? If we speak about cold ironing, let's not forget that the ships need to be equipped with electrical solutions. Today, not any single ship calling East Africa coast is equipped with this technology. So it's beautiful concept, but concretely, what can be done about it? If we speak about the perishable products, very key subject to me personally, but for the group, for CMA-CGM group overall, I think we need to stay realistic and pragmatic here. Quite a lot of product today can be shifted from air to ocean, clearly, and you've got hundreds and hundreds of hectares of avocado being planted in Kenya and Tanzania every year. So clearly, this type of product need to be shipped by ocean in the future. Flowers, 250,000 tons of flowers per year are being shipped by air from Kenya. We believe good half of it in the coming 7-8 years can be shifted to ocean. The existing technologies to shift flowers from air to ocean exist and work very well, extremely well. So this is possible for a lot of products. Now, for some products, herbs, French beans, etc., well, for products for which the shelf life is very short, let's be realistic, and this will have to continue to be shipped by air. But it will be a good complement, air and ocean. We just need to find a better balance between both. Cold room facilities, this is an important point. Shifting from air to ocean is important, but for this, indeed, this country needs a better cold room facility. Should the government invest into it? I don't believe so. I think this should come from the direct actors, the farmers with the logistic companies. So let's think about it. One point on green solutions, CMA-CGM Group has opened in January $1.5 billion envelope for greener transport solutions over the next 5 years. It's a massive amount of money coming from a private company, right? It's much bigger than any government will be ever opening. So private sector need to lead the road when it comes to greener sustainability. If Kenya is interested, we can discuss about it. We can allocate some funds for some research and development, cold ironing, whatever. So this is something we can discuss. In terms of manufacturing, I think this is very key. What will be creating jobs in this country? Biggest part of job and value job will be coming from the manufacturing sector. To do so, what is KMA doing? Kenya Manufacturing Association regarding special economic zone, export processing zone. I think KMA needs to lobby a bit more with the government bodies. But on this, I think we are already as logistic operators ready to help you and support you. SGR is working pretty well, and Kenya Railway has got its challenges, but let's be honest as well. outside of Christmas period, which is a massive challenge for the entire industry. And on this, please, KPA, for the coming Christmas season, do something, just allocate your gangs during Christmas. We all suffer. The gentleman over there was saying that he received a bill from me of $240 something because he was stuck at the port. It's not because of us. Huh? We had vessels. We had vessels waiting for 8 days for Christmas just because there were no gangs available. So this is a point. But SGR, and I saw my good friend Kenya Railway, Terry. Hi. I see you now. One point which is important for Kenya Railway to improve efficiency, and this I don't understand. You keep on arguing that it's not possible, but double stacking. You don't necessarily need a double line, but do double stacking. This might be the only rail operator today. KRC might be the only rail operator in the world not to do double stacking. Why? We all have to gain into this. The entire industry. You will make your transportation per container cheaper. You will improve the cost of imported product, and you will make exported products more competitive. Please, on this, Kenya Railway, you really need to do something. There is no reason that you cannot do double stacking. You've got, I think, 80 wagons allowing double stacking. Just use them. You don't have tunnels and so on. Just use them. Security, and it's back a bit to KRC as well, but we are looking to reposition empty reefer equipment from Mombasa to Nairobi. And on this, we are in discussion with Kenya Railway to position them through MGR. But one of the main reasons we are not doing it outside of price, and this you can help as well, but security, because MGR is stopping along the way from Mombasa to Nairobi, and these special reefer units who are repositioning are extremely costly. You have a lot of expensive spare parts and so on, and one of the reasons we are not doing is because of safety. So this can be a point for you to check out. And last point, and I don't want to be too long, but last point, which is important on the PPP. PPP, I think it was coming from the Danish embassy. Are we ready all together to cooperate and work to?
Time to Puenalangat.
I'll get back to you, Paul. Don't worry.
Thank you. For donating your time, and I think it's important. It just shows the way the private sector and the port community works together. For me, a number of issues. Take home one is there is a lot of potential for investment. There's a lot of potential to invest in the logistics sector. Logistics remains the backbone for our businesses, for investments, for manufacturing. I do agree with manufacturers. They are part and parcel of the Shippers Council, so we know the pain they go through. One of the things that I think we need to, as a take-home, is there's a lot of capacity that is required for us to be able to invest in cold chain. We need to move our numbers in terms of what we move by sea through one, because of sustainable logistics. Secondly, of course, green logistics. There is a lot of investment opportunities to do that. How do we need to now look beyond the port into the hinterland, where we now have aggregation centers, cold chain logistics that can be able to be linked to the to our railway systems, and therefore there are opportunities there for us to be able to invest in. I think we are inviting investors towards that area. Secondly, systems. We need our systems to talk to each other. We need to have our automation on a platform that is actually one-stop, that we can actually be able to link all our systems, whether they are revenue authorities, whether they are some of the regulators, or some of our operators, all of them linked. I think they are all linked as a single window. How do we make it effective in terms of how we use them? Thirdly, for the port, I think the missing link, and that is why we have complaints about port and railway performance, is the terminal operating system. We do not know where our containers are. We do not know where our cargo is, because we do not have a system that is actually. Logistics accounts for about 42% of the cost of doing business. We want to reduce that to 25%. That solution sits around here. Can we have that conversation, actually move it forward? And we are ready to actually coordinate some of those activities with the support that will come through. We should be able to have the conversation. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, co-moderator, and thanks very much for all the panelists. I think that was also one of my last remarks. I think that trying to get the change, as Jean-Baptiste mentioned, between the import and the export, that's the big ambition, I think, for the country. That means, what are we going to do with the port? That means, what are we going to do with the manufacturers? That means that we're going to think about cold chain logistics, etc. I think that ambition is there. And there's an ambition to work together between the member states from the European Union, the European delegation itself. As I mentioned in the beginning, we just signed as the EU a new contract with Trademark East Africa, really to help on some of those points. It's not the only contract we have with them, also some of the member states do have that one. We are willing and we are committed, and I would like to put that commitment here. I was looking at my Danish colleague, but she left, but it's always easier to bring them in when they are out of the room. So I suggest, together with my Danish colleague and with my Dutch colleague, but I'll also make sure that I'll invite the Germans and the French colleagues, that we have a follow-up discussion, a long, deep discussion with the manufacturers, with the different parts, to see what, with the support we can give, we can try to unlock in that sense. And I think that part is important. And come back to also what Jean-Baptiste and some of you mentioned in public-private partnerships, but then real one, not just asking private sector to do some of those things, but really thinking about what are some of those aspects and how can we help work together with Kenya to unlock those potentials, which will help develop the country, which will help the Vision 2030 of the government, which will help to enhance trade and investment between Europe and Kenya. So with those words, I really would like to have a big applause for all the panelists. And also for my co-moderator, Gilbert. Thanks very much. I think we have exactly 1 minute and 10 seconds to be at the closing ceremony in the Kilimanjaro ballroom. So thanks very much for this session. I hope it was useful, and I hope to see you soon again. Thanks.